Okay, and welcome to the Pondcast episode 3. I'm joined here by John and Ben. I'm Gil, and we're going to go through a number of topics today. First, SOPA. So the bill has been pulled from Congress. What are your guys' thoughts on SOPA in general and the actions taken by the websites such as GoDaddy and Wikipedia? Is it a case of game over, battle won, or is there still more to come?
No, it's not. It's not the end. It's not the end of this. There's more. There will be more, definitely, because these lobbyists will never stop.
Yeah, I think it's just it just shows how little these people have, how out of touch they are with the way that the internet works and technology in general. That they still keep bringing these things, to this stage where there has to be sort of, almost told what what to do by people that actually use the internet, like Wikipedia.
And the thing that really personally irritates me is the fact that the Congress members who were debating over this bill were quite freely admitting that they didn't use the internet, didn't understand how the internet worked, and didn't understand the culture behind the internet.
John, could you, just for the benefit of those listeners that have been hiding under a rock for the past month, and probably for these same congressmen who don't really know what they're talking about, could you just maybe explain, just give an overview of what the bill is?
Okay, so SOPA is a bill that's designed, was originally designed to help content providers and content makers protect their rights online and offline as well. It's basically to stop counterfeiting and to stop online piracy. The problem is that in America, it's very easy for people with lots of money to employ people to vote against things that make sense. And so what happened was SOPA, as many of these kind of acts, as the same thing happens to lots of these acts, SOPA was mutilated and kind of morphed into this horrible beast of an act that was designed essentially to make it incredibly hard to produce content if you weren't a multi-million-dollar corporation that was providing money to the very lobbyists who invented this. The other thing is they take the idea of piracy and turn it from something that is basically a misdemeanor into a major crime. It's been said that the people would be in jail for longer for piracy than they would for things like murder, which is ridiculous.
But there does need to be some kind of protection against piracy, don't you agree?
Yeah, but I think the reason that people were so afraid of what could happen if this bill passed was it was also criminalizing people who are unwittingly part, like, if there was the example that if you had a website and you had an open comment system or a forum and somebody posted content that was copyright on that, it would mean that your website could be taken down and could be seized, and you would be liable for this.
The sort of content that we're talking about could be as little as a quotation from a book.
So what you're saying is not just these pirate sites, but theoretically, if someone had a Dropbox account, and they were to put some content on there that was questionable,
or if somebody was reviewing a book,
right? Then Dropbox itself could be held accountable.
That was the biggest thing, and this is why people like Wikipedia were so afraid, because they have an editable system, and why Google was so concerned, because they would have to take these sites out of their index and spend a lot of time and money going through and making sure that the web was censored, basically.
And when we get to a point like this. The other major problem was that there was no trial, there was no court case, there was no jury, there was no judge. There was a judge, and the judge was the people who owned the content. Or not even the people who owned the content, the people who had the rights to the content, which is a completely different thing. Ask any artist. These content producers, like the Record Industry Association America, the Motion Picture Association America, their only interests are in making more money for their shareholders. They have absolutely no care in the world about things like the Arab Spring uprising, which arguably would have taken much longer to have happened if it wasn't for things like YouTube. I mean, and a great example is, say somebody takes a video of a riot, and in the background of the riot is an advert. It well, that could be. It could be claimed that would be abusing copyright law, and that could be taken down and censored.
Right.
I think one of the other interesting thing about this whole sort of related issue of the fact that these organizations have so much power, political power in America, is the example of Mega Upload when it got taken down recently, and one of the owners made a post on Google Plus just afterwards, and he said, the real reason we got taken down was they were going to launch in a week a new service which allowed artists to upload. It was massive because they were going to use their size and content delivery, skills to be able to provide a new site where artists could upload their own music, and they would get paid, 80 to 90% of the profit. And this would cut out record producers, all these big, established names. And there was a lot of theory behind that Mega Upload was taken down, by the MPAA and the RIAA pushing, the FBI to, basically step outside of America and shut down what was going to, be a massive dent in their pockets, basically.
So, okay, then, and then what the notable exception, of course, at the time was GoDaddy, right, which initially had said that it came out supporting this bill. Now, they're a domain registration and web hosting company. They would have had as much to lose as anyone else.
More.
I think GoDaddy was sort of a bit of a victim of a witch hunt. I think they came out in support of it. They didn't really know what they were doing. They probably got told to by somebody that was like, you should support. Yeah, it was like we should support this, and they were like, they didn't really have a big stand for it. But then sites like Reddit and the whole internet basically got a hold of these people, and this sort of grassroots campaign to move your domains away from them sprung up. And obviously, as soon as that happened, their marketing department turned back around and was like, we have to, distance ourselves from this as much as possible. So I think,
The other thing we have to remember as well is that GoDaddy is famous for shock advertising. They're a famous example of it being leaked that their CEO shot an elephant.
Right.
Which, everybody knows that any kind of advertising is good advertising to some extent, and I'm pretty sure they managed to attract more customers.
So do you think that was premeditated, their stance?
Perhaps. It's possible.
Right.
Retarded. Because, it would give them so much more extra work, and it would make a massive dent in their profits, but plausible.
And so where does the bill go from here?
Well, I don't know. Has it been completely defeated? Because the last time I checked, it was just being, shelved for another. They were going to go have a look at it, and I didn't think it had been. Was it thrown out?
I believe SOPA has been thrown out, but the misnomer, the red herring, is PIPA, P-I-P-A, was the Protect Internet Privacy Act, I believe, or no, Protect Intellectual Property Act. Because it's not protecting privacy at all. It's a kind of watered down version of SOPA, which an often used tactic in politics is to create a shock act that will scare everybody, and everybody will campaign, aka SOPA, and then sneak, whilst everybody's complaining about one thing, sneak the real objective in the back door, so to speak. And PIPA, in my opinion, is that back door. And then the other big problem, especially for us in the EU, is ACTA, which has already been passed and is now law and is being enacted as of today.
Tell us a little bit about that. What's similarities between that and SOPA?
So a lot of the same kind of sympathies that are displayed in SOPA are also displayed in ACTA. The difference between SOPA and ACTA is SOPA was written openly, and it was decided upon by elected officials. In the EU, ACTA was actually they claim that they don't change any law. So in fact, ACTA doesn't need to go through politics. It doesn't need to go through people deciding upon it. They are able to sneak it through by basically holding the rights, the copyrights at ransom. So the RIA and the MPAA and other totalitarian lobby movements came together and said, we're going to write this bill called ACTA, and we're going to force it on the people of the Commonwealth, essentially, and the US. And if they don't, we'll just stop trading with them.
So now that's taking effect.
Yeah, from today.
From today. And that affects all websites?
Affects all content.
All content?
Yes. Even things like pharmaceuticals. Expect the price on medicine going up, for example. It's all-encompassing.
So the things that we were talking about that related to SOPA, such as holding an ISP accountable, for example, for the content that sits, that's going to happen.
It's all implied with just the same gravity as SOPA, yes.
Right. Wow.
And this time there was no election. There was no debate. It was forced upon the people.
I think it's key for these big American lobbying groups to get these sorts of things into Europe, because historically Europe has been sort of the epicenter of the rebellion against that sort of thinking, and with Sweden and other mostly Nordic countries, but they have big technological infrastructure and they have a lot of understanding about the way the internet works, even in their political systems. So I think there is a lot of for them there's a lot of work to be done in Europe to start getting lawmakers and people in power to start thinking the way they want them to think.
Between us, I mean, there must be some kind of middle ground, surely. I mean, it can't be piracy unchecked entirely, right? I mean, there has to be something in place.
The original incarnation of copyright was called the Statute of Anne, and it was created in the 19th century by Queen Anne. It was modelled after a similar act that was created in the US. And the idea behind the Statute of Anne was that it would encourage people who created content to create more of it, and because they could make a living off of it. So originally, the Statute of Anne allowed people to create a monopoly on their content, i.e. a copyright, for 20 years. And then after those 20 years, the content became the public domain. Now that still applies, although it's been edited. Walt Disney Company, for example, famously managed to extend copyright from, I think it was 45 years at the time, to life plus 80 years. The life of the original content author, which could be a corporation, plus 80 years. So even if the corporation is defunct, completely split up and no longer functioning, content is still under copyright for another 80 years after. A corporation generally doesn't die in the common sense of the word. So that causes a lot of problems.
Okay.
So I think the middle ground is to go back to a system where a content producer has a monopoly for a reasonable amount of time, 30 years, for example. Right? That's a working lifetime, roughly. And how many people are making money on content that's been published 30 years ago? The money that's being made from content 30 years ago is negligible, I would argue.
Right, but
so they've made their money.
But the way it was until now wasn't really enforced that much. I mean, you'd have the odd case or scapegoat of downloaders being jailed or fined.
And the RIA recently released their profit margins, and they've made more profit this year than they have in any other year.
Yeah, but these are two separate issues. The idea is this stuff is commercially for sale, and therefore you shouldn't steal it.
I think the classic answer to this question is and there's a quote from Gabe Newell, who's the head of Valve Software, and he said, when they released Steam, they looked at why people were pirating things, and they said it's so much easier for people that want to play video games. They don't want to leave the house. They don't want to have to go and speak to somebody in a video shop. They want it to be as easy as downloading it. So that's what they did. They created Steam. The game's frequently on sale. They're reasonably priced. Big games cost a lot of money. Then that's reflected in Steam, and you can just download it right there.
And they also promote indie titles
Yeah.
with just the same kind of tenacity as with big mainstream titles.
So what you're saying is that we should take really the carrot approach rather than the stick, and then people will naturally.
Things like Netflix, they take off people can download movies easier than they can, for a couple of quid, and even like iTunes and stuff is, that is the future, and that business model of being able to provide stuff easy as pirating it for a reasonable price. That is the way to stop piracy.
Absolutely.
Right. So the problem then becomes the reasonable price, I think.
Yeah.
Where I think today iTunes has shown that it can work, but I think with the movies and the movie studios, that's still something that they seem to be hanging on to and looking for those huge profit margins.
Yeah, because I think, to be honest, they're so used to that sort of ridiculous money. It is ridiculous money, and movie industry makes an absurd amount of money, and so does the recording industry. But the difference is that artists don't see, maybe 10% of sales, 10% of their own content, and that's why so many artists came out, in support of Mega Upload, because they were bringing out this new service, and even services like Bandcamp and stuff, they still take a large percentage of more than half of what they sell to you and me, but at least they're giving like 30 to 40% to their artists instead of like 5 to 10.
So you'd like to see a situation in the future where basically the record companies or book publishers, for all intents and purposes, all the middlemen are knocked out of the picture.
Completely.
And the artist comes directly to the buyer.
There can be middlemen in the form, look at the record industry, okay? Record industry currently works as like a kind of a mafioso type. They have all the keys, they have all the doors, they have all the locks, and the only way in order to get to the other side is to go through the record industry to get the publicity. They are a PR company. They are nothing more than a PR company, and that's how they should behave. They should behave like, for example, was it Bandcamp? Yeah, like Bandcamp, where they see themselves as a distributor. That's all they do. They take a snippet, they take a slice, and they distribute, and they try to propagate your content. And that's how they should behave. Nothing more, nothing less, like a pipe.
But surely that can't work if a specific artist is looking for exposure. He or she is going to be one of millions out there, all within the same system of distribution. And what makes them stand out?
The content. Content is king.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's why I think what happens to the recording industry is you have pop stars that, that there's this image and these things, it's just not music. It's not.
No, but that's what people buy into.
Yeah, no,
They only buy into it because they're told what they like.
Yes, but that's saying we'll get rid of the whole idea of advertising in general in any industry.
No, it's not that.
I think we just need to move away from this hyper marketing. It's a stereotype that the recording industry professionals are, bad people, and they're you see a movie about anything, and there's always, a recording industry, producer, big shot guy that doesn't care about anything to do with music. He just cares about whether or not he can sell you. And in a digital age where, we can make these decisions quite easily, and the content is so easily delivered to everybody, why are we still dealing with these people? Why are we still letting them have this monopoly and this mafia style, grip on the recording industry? It's outrageous.
Yes.
Okay, no, fair enough. And it kind of brings us on to the next topic quite nicely, which is Mega Upload, which we've mentioned a couple of times now. And so earlier this week, Mega Upload was taken down, along with a number of its satellite websites. And its owner, Kim .com, and I once had the name change from something.
Kim Schmidt,
Kim Schmidt,
Yeah.
lovely,
Austrian, I believe.
living in New Zealand.
Yes.
Okay, had locked himself away in a panic room, as the reports go, and
Really?
sitting with a shotgun to take on the world. But
Take on the mafia.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, yes.
Well, I think the most ridiculous thing about the entire thing is America managed to arrest a man in New Zealand for hosting a website in Europe, and with no, just waltzed in there basically, just world police style.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's scary.
Yeah, but at the same time, but you think? I mean, I was reading a little bit about his antics in general. Some of them
Most of it was
quite
PR.
good, and some okay, but there's got to be some truth in some of it, and I think some of the things he did were very good. Some of the things he did were not so good. But the idea now that as a result of Mega Upload being taken down and other such sites such as Mega Porn and Mega Video or whatever it is, so some of the other file sharing sites have also taken action now, not under any specific threat of law or anything, but I think they've taken it perhaps into their own hands and saying, okay, this is what could happen maybe. So I think FileSonic, FileShare, and a bunch of these have also now disabled sharing, and in effect what they are, you could have gone and paid your premium subscription now for a month, and all you can do is basically upload and download files to your own little locker.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's exactly what they wanted to happen. They wanted to send a message out, if you're going to try and basically take away the money from these massive organizations, they have the power to come and get you wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think there was something interesting as well, that people are starting a sort of a class action lawsuit against the FBI because they took down, not only the website but access to people's, research files. People that use that, it wasn't completely illegal, the entire website. And
I mean, for example, a community that I'm subscribed to is XDA developers, which is a community around modifying Android phones. They had over 200,000 Mega Upload links that were completely legitimate. It's all open source code, all gone in one day. Just gone, no backups, because that was the backup. It was a backup website.
So do you think that's the end of file sharing sites, or is this something that's temporary? And
no, I think they keep doing this. That when VHS came out, it was oh my god, it's going to destroy the industry, and no, it didn't.
It's rubbish.
And these websites don't. I don't think it's based on recording industry and music sales. I don't think it's denting anybody's profits.
Because originally this whole
In fact, there is some studies out there that prove that there's a correlation between files sharing and sales. I think it's like 9/10 of the most pirated movies are also blockbuster hits. So what does that tell you?
Okay, but if you look back over the last 10 years or so, and about the ways that people shared their files previously, whether legal or illegal content, and when they were using originally tools such as Kazaa or those, and then moving on to torrent sites and then onto these file sharing websites. So do you think that there'll just be another medium,
I think that
introduced to kind of offset what they've done now?
Exactly. This is what I was saying before, that these people don't understand the way the internet works. It is fundamentally impossible to stop this happening. If I have a connection in my house to John, I'll be able to send whatever I like down it. There is even China, that the most restrictive country in the world, they can't filter everything out. They can make it difficult and they can send it more underground, but there's no way. Like the classic thing was when they were seizing domain names, and they seized a load of domain names because they were involved in etc. And I don't know why nobody told them that you can just buy, you can access stuff via IP addresses. You can buy another domain name. You can, the way the DNS works is it's impossible to take something down like that. It just proves that they have no understanding of, the underlying technology behind the internet and why it was created in the first place.
Okay.
One of the just going back to SOPA again, one of the clauses in SOPA is that as part of the takedown of a website, the DNS has to be blocked, which is an unbelievably ridiculous statement to make. That means that these DNS servers, which have millions and millions and millions of addresses, now have to run some sort of filter through this massive database every time somebody tries to connect to check whether it's been censored or not, which is a ridiculous problem for for an ISP to solve for someone else.
Yeah, and not even that is completely useless. You know, you can buy another domain name in a second. You can buy anything. You change your IP address. You can change. You know, it's just fundamentally unworkable.
Okay, I mean, I understand all of that, and I also understand that it's all coming from a good place, and that the victims are really 95% of the people out there who want to use these services for good. But there are pirates out there, and there are people that do want to hack in and take content and distribute credit card numbers and whatever they want to do. And that brings us on to our last topic, which is the anonymous hackers and what they've been up to, and whether or not it's in support of any actions taken against Mega Upload or anyone else. Is what they're doing justified?
If I had to say yes or no, I'd say yes.
Well, actually, just before this, maybe either Ben or John, one of you just briefly explain what they have been doing, if that's
okay. So before I explain what anonymous are, I'd just like to clarify the term hacker. I think most developers will chuckle at when they hear this, but the term hacker has been abused by the media. They've taken a hold of this word and they've mutilated it into something different from what it means. A hacker is somebody who takes an object, a thing, an entity, and uses it in a way that it wasn't first thought of being used.
good or bad.
For good or bad.
Yeah.
For example, somebody. In fact, I know a guy who has taken a model railway, turned it into a monorail that carries pizza from the front door to his computer. Now, that's a classic example of something a hacker would do. A hacker could mash up maybe something like Facebook and Flickr so that it synchronizes his photos on Facebook with his photos on Flickr. That's a hacker. A hacker could also be someone who finds an exploit on Facebook and then contacts Facebook and says, hey, you've got a problem with your website, you should really fix this. That's also a hacker. Now, what the media call hackers, that's a term known as a cracker. And a cracker is somebody who does malicious things for either profit or in order to kind of instigate the demise of the victim.
Okay.
So, for example, somebody who hacks into a website and then deletes all the files and all the backups. That's a cracker. A hacker, perhaps, if they were feeling particularly mischievous, would hack into a website and maybe insert a little text file saying, John was here. Something mischievous, but not necessarily malicious.
So then why has the media taken on one term and not the other?
I think early 90s hacker films would probably be like the kind of films that make you think that hackers can blow up your computer from remote locations, or they sit in darkened rooms on the Matrix, or I think that's been the big cause of these people, these basically kids get too much credit for for being. I mean, they do. There are some smaller sections that do have a good, a reasonable technical knowledge, like anti-sec, and people that have been using. They're not advanced exploits, but at least they have been using like SQL injections and stuff, and they've been getting into servers and leaking data and this sort of stuff. But the vast majority of these people are just
script kiddies.
They're not even. I mean, they've made DDoS. DDoSing was when it first started emerging was quite a big thing, because the internet was quite slow, and if you when you DDoS somebody, you used like a lot of computers, and you sent a load. In DDoSing is where you use a lot of computers to send a lot of traffic to one particular host, and this overloads it, and it can't connect to the internet.
It's a bit like a carpet bomb.
Yeah, it's just like jamming the letterbox full of blue tack or something, and but nowadays that used to at least require some technical skill, because you either had to take over as many computers as you can and then use them, or you had to do that. You had to take over these computers and use their traffic against an individual. But now, there's so many people that are in Anonymous and these sorts of groups that they all themselves download software and use their own connections, and so it's more like a digital protest. Basically, there's not really much you can do, but it gets into the media, and
I would clarify that I think people look at things on the internet in a different perspective, whereas people who are, I hate using this term, but internet natives, they see it in a different light from the RIA and Congress people and the media and your grandpa.
Yeah, but there are more of them than there are of you.
yeah, but
No.
Aren't there?
Well, okay. I see a DDoS as like a sit-down protest,
yeah.
So
which
how
is
would,
completely legal.
so how would you classify Anonymous as a group?
They're digital activists. They're like, they're angry about things, and I mean, that's the thing. Anonymous has also been changed quite a lot over the years. When it first came out, it was just about people having fun, regardless of any laws or anything else. They just wanted to do what made them laugh. And now it's sort of become a lot more political. A lot more people get involved because of, they start doing, and they do good things, they do bad things. Like, I remember when the Arab Spring protests were coming up, they were setting up links where people could phone in and leave a message on a phone line, and they would translate it into a Twitter feed, and that's how a lot of information got out. And for these sorts of grassroots activities.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between what they do and.
Yeah, but when they go off and hack some or crack some database, and then spread that information out for the public to see.
I think.
What's the difference between social engineering? So going into, for example, an excellent social engineer was a man named Kevin Mitnick, who's a bit of a hero of mine. So he went into a computer company called DEC, and he went up to the front desk, pretended to be somebody from internally in the company, and managed to trick this guy into letting him in on their patents files, and he walked out with their patents. What's the difference between somebody who does that to say somebody who's kind of releasing some WikiLeaks style files, and somebody who, for example, is who photocopies a letter that proves that the Cold War was, I don't know.
Well, there is a difference, because
What's the difference between photocopying a physical file and leaking a database of dangerous information?
Okay, so the difference is, depending on what kind of information they release, if that information includes individual personal details, credit card numbers would be one, but it could be anything really. Then the victim becomes that poor individual who has nothing to do with this fight at all, and yet is being subjected to potentially credit card fraud using the numbers.
I think we have to separate the wheat from the chaff. I mean, yes, Anonymous does daft stuff like giving out credit card details of people who've been shopping at child porn websites, for example. That's the chaff. The wheat, on the other hand, is, for example, the Cablegate leak, which I'm not sure if that was. You could say, I guess, that was a kind of an Anonymous style thing that was going on there. They leaked a database full of very sensitive information, and in my opinion, it was a necessary evil. And things like that happened during the Vietnam War. and these people were paraded by the media as heroes. But because it's something that people don't understand, they're scared of it, and so they see it as foreign and scary and evil.
I think the media definitely overhypes these sorts of like when they call anonymous hackers and all they're doing is, in the opinion of anybody that knows what they're doing, they're just protesting. They're just making a little bit of a scene, and they say they get into everywhere and release all these important. And what has happened really? What has happened? Even with the WikiLeaks, which wasn't anonymous, but the American government was like, you're putting our people at risk, and that was their obvious fallback.
Okay, but
their own department said that nobody was at risk.
Yeah, but we're saying this, looking in from the sidelines to a certain extent, and I'm asking you guys both as internet consumers and web developers. So 2 cases. One case, a website that you'd worked on for the last 6 months happens to be a potentially controversial website. It's hacked, data's deleted, the server is taken over, and you end up having to work 3 weeks non-stop to get the thing back up. And second situation, you go and you want to buy some obscure record that's not available on any of the big websites, and you've gone to some long tail e-commerce site, you bought it, but those credit card details are one of the sites that happen to be hacked and then released out into the open, and fraud occurs and your account's been charged to the tune of, I don't know, £1,000. How do you feel then?
I think in the first situation, the only person I'd be mad with is myself for writing code that could be, that could have that done to it. I think.
Well, surely any code could.
It's almost a privilege to have somebody do that to you. Like, I have actually released code, and there's like the way that exploits are released is there's a few big websites that people post like exploits to, and I had a bit of my code to come up on that, and I was actually quite privileged that somebody would take the time to review it and find this weakness, and it made me, it helped me learn. And I think.
But is that how you'd react? Is that what you think?
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely,
I would be actually quite privileged to have somebody do that to me, and I have had it happen to me. I stupidly let my previous boss, who was an ex-security consultant, I said, why don't you have a look at my server, see what you can do. And within about a couple of hours, he had got in and, changed my login script. And I was like, wow, how did you do it? And he told me, and I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, but once again, that's within a contained environment. I'm talking about a live working site with real users out there.
No, I mean, as a developer, no, I wouldn't care. If I owned the site, if I was making money off it, yes, I would care. But as a developer, I think it's interesting to have somebody, it's a bit humiliating, I admit, but it's interesting.
Humbling.
Yeah, humbling, yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Okay, and the second situation, John?
So the second situation, just to check, was that I was a consumer, and I had details that were released, yeah?
Yep, and money spent.
Okay, so that's happened to me. I was one of the few unlucky people to get caught up in the PlayStation 3 leak. I didn't have any money stolen, but my account was compromised. And I think the question that you should, me as a consumer should be asking myself is, who do I blame? Do I blame the person who has found this exploit and used it, who's capitalized on an exploit, just like somebody capitalizes on a financial market? Or do I blame the shoddy development practices of Sony? Coming from a developer's perspective, despite the fact I'm a consumer, I am inclined to blame Sony for this, considering they're a multi-million-pound corporation who spend millions and millions of pounds every year building these systems and hiring the best people.
I think I have another nice example of the difference between a hacker and what can happen in these situations. Is I was a member of a website, I can't remember which, it was some forum, I don't think I was very active on there, but I'd used a password that I do use in other places, and it had my email address, and their database, unbeknown to me, got was leaked, and the hash of my password was on the internet. The internet had started going through them, and it wasn't very well hashed. It was just a standard MD5 hash, and they started breaking them, and then these lists started appearing of passwords with emails, and some guy managed to get a hold of these lists and wrote a program that would go through every one of the emails saying, look, this is your password, it's on the internet. And I got an email from an automator who said, I've just done this because I've seen these passwords on the internet attached to emails. I've sent you an email, and this is your password. And I just woke up one morning, checked my email, and I got an email with my password in it to my email, which is, on this server that I used that password for. And, I was like, well, thank you. That's a very nice thing to do. And yeah, it's a difference between, what we call a white hat and a black hat hacker.
Yeah.
Somebody who does something maliciously, and somebody who just does something because it's fun to.
So in all these cases, you guys would never blame the hackers? Or
No,
crackers?
I blame the website that only hashed my password with MD5. Didn't salt it.
But can you see how the general public, who don't understand what MD5 or hashes are, who don't understand that the code is poorly written, they only understand that there is this big name, Sony, for example, and then a bunch of bad people, as it were, came in and hacked.
I can understand. They probably see hackers more like terrorists.
Yeah.
The truth is, they're not. They're just people who are taking advantage.
Right,
of the
but how do you
situation.
then educate the general public?
I'm a bit. I don't know. I'm in favour of this, sort of evolutionary perspective in that people that are stupid enough to put their credit card details into websites that are quite obviously fraudulent, and they're going to die out, and they're going to learn. So I think
Yeah, but Sony's a reputable company, and in this particular case, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's different from the majority of cases. That's why it made such big news. Because it's such a big deal.
It was a big thing. But people that that get Nigerian scammed or 491 and those sorts of things, I think their day is coming, because there's only so long that this can go on.
Yeah,
I also think that people who, for example, filled 491 scams. I actually know a person who fell to a 491 scam, and he was in the process of getting medical treatment for brain problems. So, and that's literally the only instance that I can think of somebody falling foul to something that, other than somebody who has literally no experience of the internet, like none, and think, oh, I got a letter. But even people who get letters in the mail,
There's just a healthy sense of skepticism that
but
some people need to have.
They are getting more and more intricate. You have, for example, spoof emails coming from PayPal or someone pretending to be PayPal with the logo, with the form laid out, everything done with a submit button, and they've got their some SSL certificate. As far as a general user is concerned, that looks like a legit site, and they're quite likely to put their credit card details in.
The internet is a dangerous place.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a bit mean just to say that evolutionarily they won't.
Yeah,
they won't
they're not
survive.
stupid.
I know. It's a bit, but
they're just a different kind of smart.
Yes,
I think there's so much. That's the thing. People try and speak like the internet is a separate place, and it's not. It's just people being connected, and in the real world, stuff like that happens. You get some guy that asks to borrow 20p and then he mugs you. These sorts of things happen. You just need to, and there's so much money involved in this. Like the Russian mafia makes, so much of their money from these online sorts of things, and so do other massive criminal enterprises. I think that's where we should be targeting, rather than people that break into Sony and do all these things. What about these people that send out these messages and do all these nasty things online because it's profitable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not somebody that's just security testing a website, penetration, getting in and just having a look around.
Yeah. I think the kind of important thing to take away from this is that there's a difference between somebody who is capitalizing for money and people who are capitalizing for perhaps in order to get a job or in order to raise their public profile or their private profile, and people who do it just because they enjoy the challenge and they enjoy the fun. There's a difference,
Yes.
and people find it, especially people who are outside of our community, they find it very difficult to understand this, and I can understand why. but that doesn't detract from the fact that I disagree with them.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, I think we'll stop there, and it's a pretty controversial topic, and I'm sure we're going to get lots of emails about this for next week's show. Just to remind you, you can send your feedback to info@cyber-duck.co.uk, and we'll see you next week for episode 4. Bye bye.